So this quilt over here, I just made this past weekend. And because I needed that Ruby Star Society panel
Yeah.
print, and I was like, how can I justify buying that? And so I did it, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, did I need to? Did I have time to? No, but it happened. So
I mean, need is a weird word, right? Like,
yeah,
your need versus someone else's need. It's up for interpretation.
my mental health needed me to make that quilt. So
there you go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I have a very special guest today. It's Erica Jackman of the Kitchen Table Quilting. Wait, is that how is it? Yeah, Kitchen Table Quilting.
yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay, I'm excited too. So you're located in Salem, Oregon. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's very rainy today, which is not unusual, except normally it's kind of a drizzle. And today it's like a deluge.
Oh my gosh.
So, it's a lot. So it's very dark here too right now. So, and you're in Idaho, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's not rainy, but it's definitely a cloudy day. So
yeah,
we're in the darkness. We just don't have any precipitation. So it's very dry here.
We usually have both. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. We get inversions in the winter. So it's pretty much from December until March. So
yeah,
it's fine. So
I need sunlight.
Yeah, it's fine. Plan. So how long have you been in Salem?
We moved here about 5.5 years ago from Southern California. We had been in San Diego for about 3 years before that. And then before that, we were in LA for 7 years. And so it was a big change weather-wise, but a good one for us. We really like it here. It's great. It's a small town. It's not too big, not too small. It's got most of the stuff, and we can be in Portland in like 45 minutes. So it's nice.
I didn't realize just how close it was to Portland. And I was going to ask that. Are you close? Like, is it, does that impact like how you're able to source fabrics or?
I mean, I buy pretty much everything online at this point, just because there aren't locally a lot of options in Salem, and to get to Portland, it's really not that far, especially after living in LA, where it can take 45 minutes to just go a couple miles, having to drive 45 minutes to get to Portland isn't bad, but it does take time. So yeah, I don't buy in person often. And I have a stash. It's big. So I try not to buy too much, but I still do. So,
I mean, can't help it, right?
Yeah. Why sell if you're not going to buy fabric? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
I know. That's like the danger of having a quilting business is like, I'm buying for other people, but also I need to buy this fabric for myself on the side. My husband's like, where did all this fabric come from? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. I don't think I could do it. I wouldn't be able to part with anything.
Yeah. It's too hard, but I think it's also good to have a stash because then you can pull when you need something instead of always running to the store. And there's been so many times where I've saved my own self by having something, stashed away. And
and I always am like really particular about certain colors too. Like I want that specific shade of that one color that, and they like never make it again. And so then I start to, we won't say hoard, but I treasure them. Yeah.
So you savor them and hold on to them for good later on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the same. I have scraps of like specific prints or specific colors that are super hard to get a hold of now, or you have to pay a ton of money because they're vintage or whatever. And I can't even throw this tiny 1-inch square away because I could do something.
You're gonna need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not, but you think you're going to.
Yeah. We're having a huge stash of fabric, but
yeah.
So I visited your blog, and you started that in 2012, I read.
Mhm.
So is that when you started quilting, or were you quilting before that?
I started quilting when I was pregnant with my middle child, and he'll be 12 in June. So it's been about 12 years. So I started the blog. I started a couple, that was back in when the blog was the big thing.
Mhm.
Everybody had a blog, and I tried a couple times to start one and failed, and then eventually started the one that I am still using after I've been sewing for a couple of years. So yeah, it's been about 10 years this month since I started my blog. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's crazy.
And you have so
Things have
many,
changed so much.
yeah. I was gonna say, like, you have so many quilt patterns, and they're very stylistically recognizable as yours, which I love that, like, your voice comes through in your patterns.
That is
Um,
like the best. That's one of the best compliments to me, because I that makes me feel like I'm being true to myself when I, make a pattern. So I appreciate that.
yeah, I was like scrolling through a bunch of them and just looking at everything. And because recently, um, well, I say recently, but probably within the last like 4 or 5 months, my mom and I were buying the new Riley Blake line of Little Briar Rose, the Sleeping Beauty
Mhm.
inspired fabrics, because that was my favorite Disney princess growing up. And so we were obsessively like purchasing everything we could. And we saw your Tessa pattern sitting in the shop. And I was like, this would be perfect because we can showcase all the fabrics. And so we bought it. And then I was like, wait, I think I follow her on Instagram. So then I started looking at your stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh. And at that time, you were posting all the different versions that were,
Oh, uh-huh.
you made them all, or if they were like test patterns, or test quilters for
That
you.
may have been when we were doing the quilt along for
Oh,
the pattern. So yeah, while I was doing the quilt along, I think I made 3 different versions because I love that pattern because, well, I love fabric. So I love that it doesn't cut it up into little pieces, but then it's also just a quick pattern, which I like too. So,
yeah.
so I got carried away and made 3.
I just like at the time remember like, oh my gosh, this is the quilt. And it was like popping up in my feed over and over again. And I just loved every single version that
Oh,
because it was like, yeah, it really does showcase the fabrics. And I was like, wait, who is this lady? So I like started more into your photos. And then I saw your blog and like all the different patterns. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, that was one thing I really noticed, was just how much they all very much have the same voice and the same kind of style. It feels like reminiscent, like, oh, I've seen this before, but not really. And kind of going,
mhm.
oh, okay, it's the same person. Like you can tell it's yours. So
Yeah.
I really love that about your patterns.
Thank
So,
you. I love making them. It's been the thing I didn't know I needed in my life. So it's the best.
awesome. So I think I counted like around 50. Would that be
Yeah. Yeah. I have 50 was, yeah, I think I'm at 52.
okay?
So
Okay.
it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like one, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. A good thing, like shops like you to number them. So good
Mm,
thing I started numbering. Otherwise, I just have no idea.
yeah. Oh, that's fun. So having so many patterns, and I know, it's been, you said you started quilting 12 years ago, but you've had your blog for like 10 years. Like, have you always designed your own patterns, or like, was that something that you started with, or?
I started, let's see, probably about 2 or 3 years after I started quilting, I started to want to try to do my own thing. And I just remember always sitting there and thinking, like, every design has been made. There are no more quilt designs,
Mhm.
which, I think is kind of true, right? Like, I took a creative writing class in college, and the teacher said, there are only 2 stories: a man moves into town and a man moves out of town. but those are really the same story, right? Like they're all variations on the same idea. So I think I just got kind of started wanting to try to vary patterns a little bit. And so I did that a little bit. And then I just decided I wanted to try doing my own thing. And so I mostly did, when I first started, I would design for fabric companies. So they would send me fabric collection images, and then I would come up with some ideas for them. And then they would offer that as like a free pattern on their website.
Okay.
So I did that for about probably 3 years. And that was a great way to just learn how to write patterns, because they would have me work with like a tech editor or somebody to help, that would do the graphics and all that, because I didn't have any kind of real background in doing that. And so that was a great way to get started. But eventually I was like, well, if I'm doing this for them, I should try doing my own pattern. And so I released a couple patterns, and they sold, a few copies. This is back when everyone was selling patterns on Craftsy. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that went okay. And then I released my Betty quilt pattern, which was kind of the precursor to the Tessa one you were just talking about, which used big pieces. And that one did really well. And so that kind of encouraged me to keep going. So that was kind of how it started.
Okay.
I still don't really know how I
you're like, I don't know,
it worked out.
Happened.
It just happened. Like lots and lots of work, but it just happened.
Right. I know. Those things you think, like, I don't know where it came from, but you actually put in a ton of work to make it happen. And it's been a lot of work, but it's been good. And at the time, we were living in Southern California. My husband was an attorney, and not that we were rich or anything, but we didn't really need me to work, and which was great. So I could kind of buy fabric and not feel bad about it. And I made a little bit of money to help support that. But then he worked so much. Like he would be at work from like 7 a.m. to 3 o'clock in the morning, and then have to drive home and basically go right back to work. And so it just wasn't sustainable job wise. So we thought, where could we live that he could pretty much do anything and we could afford to live there? So we started looking at places. Our family's all in the Western United States. We wanted to stay fairly close. And so we decided we'd try Oregon, and he decided he wanted to work in state government. So we found him a job. He does just fine, but not nearly as well as he did as an attorney. And so my income has become very important to our family, and it's something I never thought that we would need. And so it worked out really well that I had already kind of started to build that before we needed it, because then we needed it. Right. Oh, good thing we have this.
Yeah. And so it's worked out really nicely, because it's hard, because I was talking to my daughter about this. I always feel like if my kids are home, I need to be with them, but it doesn't really work out that way, especially this school year, because I feel like, last school year was a whole other thing where they were never at school, but this year they get all these random extra days off for like teacher prep stuff. I don't know. Anyway, it feels like they're never at school. And so I would never get anything done if I was always with them when they were home. And so my daughter, said, it's important, it's your job. And so I think it helps my kids understand that there's balance. And I don't know. It's a tricky thing. It's always, as a mom, it's a tricky thing.
Oh, for sure.
So.
Yeah, I have two stepsons, and one is old, like he's almost 21, but he's in the Space Force, so he's not home anymore. But our younger one is still in high school, and but he's like never home. So I'm like, oh, what about Parker? And we'll try to be home. And my husband and I both work from home. I mean, we work out of my parents' house. Our quilting business is out of my parents' house, but my husband's home because he works from home now, but he's never home. The kid is never home.
Yeah. My kids aren't quite to that stage yet.
They get a car and then they think they don't have to ever be home. No, he's a great kid. He's, got a job, and he's in track and all that. So
yeah. Oh yeah. No, kids are busy.
But yeah, it's like
my oldest is only 13, so we're not quite to high school yet. Okay. We're getting there.
Yeah. They get a little more independent and you're like, oh, but you still have that feeling of like wanting to be there and
Yeah.
be available to them. And
There's always the guilt.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't go away. It's not a bad thing, I don't think, because I do want to spend time with my kids, but
Right.
I also want to spend time with my fabric. So
Right. Exactly. So it's like, well, if you're home and they're home, you're working, but they're there. It's like, okay,
yeah,
both
yeah,
words, a foot in both sides.
yeah.
Oh man. So having so many patterns, like going back to that a little bit, how do you feel, or like where do you get inspired to make these patterns? You have so many and they all are so different. And so what inspires you?
So there's not really a thing. Sometimes I'll just like scroll through Pinterest when I'm just feeling stuck. But to me, it's not really, I mean, and definitely seeing other people and what they're making, um, that helps inspire me. And I try to follow on Instagram, not just quilters, but people of all different kinds of arts that I admire. But to me, the most important part about designing a quilt pattern, and I don't think this would be the same for everybody, this is just works for me, is that I just have to do it every day for a little bit.
Mm.
So I just every day sit down and work on something. And so I'll won't even be like an idea that I think is even a little bit good. I'll just put it on there and then I'll just work on it a little bit and then I'll save it. And then a couple months later, I'll come back and work on it a little bit more. And it's just that process of editing and revising over and over and over again and trying things a little bit differently, changing the scale, um, until I finally get to a point where it's something that I like. And so sometimes that takes like a year of doing that over and over again. Very rarely do I just think of an idea and sit down and sketch it out. That's happened like maybe 2 times ever.
Mm.
Usually it's more of a process. And I do really like working with fabrics when I'm mocking up ideas, is that I use electric quilt because it's easy to just throw things in there and do things really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to work with fabrics that I like when I'm doing that. That helps inspire me too. So definitely fabrics inspire me. I mean, that's how I got into this in the first place. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. That would be what kind of drives my inspiration. So yeah. I don't have a good answer. If I had a way to just come up with quilt ideas, I would be using it.
Right.
Because sometimes I feel like I get that feeling again that there are no more quilt ideas, which is of course not true because there's always new ways to do things.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, especially now when there's so many people writing quilt patterns, that like every possible combination of things is being used somewhere else. So there's always that fear that like I'll write this pattern and then someone will have someone will have already published it and I will have missed it, or I try to be very aware, and I have some things I do to try to prevent that. Like you can do like a reverse Google image search and look at other things. You can upload something into Pinterest and it will show you similar things, so that helps with that. But yeah, that's always the worry.
Yeah. That would be my worry too, I think, of just like, what if recreating something that someone else has already done? And because I have noticed that like there are a lot of pattern writers out there and it's amazing. I don't think it's something that would be, that I would do, but I also really admire those that can do it. And then, yeah, like what if somebody has the same thing or somebody copies you even? It's like, because there are so many people doing it. But I think you're right.
Yeah.
So many different ways to approach.
Yeah. And sometimes, I'll post a picture and someone will say, well, this is kind of like this pattern. And I'm like, well, they use the same block, which has been around for like hundreds of years. So, they are going to look kind of the same. So there's definitely a lot of overlap between ideas. And sometimes it just comes down to like the size of the block, how much fabric it's using. I don't know. It's a tricky thing.
Yeah. I just am in awe of just how many patterns you have and just how unique each of them is. And they're all just so beautiful. I think you're definitely leaving your mark on the quilting world. And I think that's
Thank
really
you.
cool.
Thanks. I enjoy it. It's fun. I definitely am at the point right now where I need to slow down a little bit. I'm a little overwhelmed at the moment. It's very messy in the background. So, but I have some plans for later this year to go back and revise some older patterns and add some sizes and just redo the graphics on some of my first patterns. So that will be less stressful.
Right. Because you're not reinventing something or like making a new thing. You're going back and working on the stuff that's already there. And it's still creative because you still have to put effort into.
I really enjoy doing that. So my goal is to do 2 patterns a year for the next couple of years. So, and then just get those earlier patterns where I didn't have as many size options and that type of thing. So, but no matter what, it's like, no matter how many size options you have, people will always send an email and say, but can you make it this size? Tell me how to do that. And I'm like, I would love to, but I just can't do that.
Like you do it.
Yeah, you're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry. I think people think like, oh, this would just take her a minute, but it doesn't just take a minute. And also I get like multiple of those emails a week. So it's like, that could be my full-time job, is just resizing patterns for people's specifications. So
yeah, if you're constantly doing their requests, like you're not going to have time for anything else.
Yeah. It's so hard because you want to help people, but you have to say no, because that would just be overwhelming.
Yeah. Having those boundaries is super important in your self-run business.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because otherwise they'll get you.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could work all day, every day and never take a break. And it's never ending.
Yeah. I always joke. I'm like, I traded my 9 to 5 for a 24/7. So
yes, that is exactly what it is. It's the job that, it's like the gas will fill any space that you put it in or whatever. That's exactly what it is. It'll take as much space as you'll give it.
Yeah, exactly.
And wear you out while it doesn't.
Yeah, you like get so exhausted. I'm like, why am I so tired? I'm like, oh, because I've been working since the moment I woke up.
Yeah.
And answering people's questions and solving problems. And I think that's one thing that people don't really realize about quilting or, designing your own patterns, especially is you're solving problems constantly. And that is mentally exhausting.
It is. It's satisfying too, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like exhausting. You get a solution to that problem and you figure it out, but it's like that process. And I think, yes, it can be relaxing, and yes, it can be therapeutic in ways, but then there's times where it's a lot of math. People don't realize you need math.
Yeah. It is a lot of math. And I think, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, is people probably think like, oh, you just get to play with fabric all day, but it's like, okay, but how much time are you spending responding to emails and the emails? Yes. And all of those types of things, like administrative tasks that aren't creative and that you don't enjoy, but are important. And then occasionally someone will send a really nice email, which is great.
Yeah.
I think an email the other day, someone said, people have issues with downloading things, just, computer on their end, which is fine. I'm happy to help if I can. But someone emailed and said, where do my downloads save on my computer? And I was like, oh, I don't know. That's up to you.
Oh, no.
You'd have to figure that one out.
It's like, oh my gosh. Thankfully, we don't have any things like that. But yeah, that's, it's hard because, you want to help people, but you're like, what is my capacity to help you?
Yeah.
Not that. I'm not.
Yeah, no, but people say like, this didn't work. I'm happy to email them the file. It's no big deal. I do that probably 10 times a day sometimes.
Really?
Which takes 10 seconds. It's not I'm that type of thing I'm happy to help with, but I just don't know where your downloads save on your computer. So sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Like, and I'm part of this quilt pattern designers group on Facebook, and I'm not great at contributing, but it's nice to see other people post things and be able to relate to what they're saying too, because we all experience the same
Mhm.
types of issues, and people who are angry for no reason, and it's customer service stuff that's we
Mhm.
all experience. So
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, and you're like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's
yeah,
very black and white for you, you know.
yeah.
Well, you never said. I'm like, I swear to you, I did. But yeah, I think it, and that's again where those boundaries come in place. Like, you have to know your own limits to be able to,
Hmm.
I think, interact in a productive way with people, whether you're selling patterns or whether you're making quilts for people or long arming or whatever business capacity you're in.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's where I'm learning that the hard way. So, I mean, not so, I shouldn't say that. That makes it sound like I'm having a hard time. I'm not, but there's just little things here and there that I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to be an issue. And now I have to fix it, or,
Yes.
little things. But
Yeah, there are like a million of those, and they're all little, but they add up to a lot. But it's all I one of the things I actually really like about quilting and writing patterns is that there is learning involved. Like I love that I'm
yeah.
still being pushed, and so I'll
Mhm.
take the push from whatever direction it comes. It's good. There are growing pains involved, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that I have something that pushes me. It's
Mhm.
a good thing. But I've never been that person that wanted to own a business. I'm not like a businessy
Mm.
entrepreneur interested in that. I like the creative part, and I like the technical part, but that part is hard for me.
Mm.
The self promotion and
Mhm.
all of that.
Yeah, it
Not my
feels
favorite.
shameless.
Yeah,
Almost. And just like, no, that's what you do. I'm like, but do I have to?
yeah, I know. Can't people just find me
Yeah.
without me doing that? Yeah, that part has been definitely the hardest. And so, being able to use social media in a way that isn't doesn't make me cringe every time I have to do something.
Mhm.
Finding a way to approach that has been tricky. But now that I've kind of figured that out for myself, it's been easier.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to do it in a way that works for you.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's going to be so many other opinions out there of how you're supposed to do it or what you should
Hmm.
be doing, and I think there are definitely things that work better than other things, but also I'm with you. Just do what works for you and what fits your personality, and I think the people who are your people will find you.
Yeah. Yeah. I always just tell
Yeah.
people, like, if people say, how do I get better at doing this? And I just say, just do your best work and keep improving, and people will find you, because,
Mhm.
people want, you know, the flashy, fancy stuff is great, but people just want a good, well written pattern that they can follow. And so if you do that, people will find you. It
Yeah.
may take a while.
Right. Well, and I think just like anything else, word of mouth is really important too. So it's like
Hmm.
you have those few solid or few people that had a really good experience, they're going to tell everybody they know, and then those people are going to come find you. And that's how our business has grown, just so much
Hmm.
word of mouth. And I know that it's the same for a lot of other entrepreneurs. Like they've really, that word of mouth is so important. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think
yeah,
so too.
like what you
Yeah.
said, if you're doing your best work and you're always looking for ways to grow and improve yourself,
Hmm.
and then yeah, people will come find you.
Yeah. And I think people can tell when you're not being yourself too, when you're not, because sometimes I'll follow somebody on Instagram, and I'll just be like, I just can't. I can just tell they're trying to get me to buy stuff that I don't want to buy, and it's just
Mhm.
too much. Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, that's been a balance too, like with finding other authentic voices is,
Hmm.
it's not as tricky as it might seem like it is, but I think there are, every once in a while you're like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna say anything else about that, but yes, yeah,
yeah.
I think so too. I just like making quilts, and
Mhm.
I like finding other people who like making quilts. So
Yeah.
that's all I want. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a thing to ask for.
Right. It's like it's so
Yeah,
simple.
yeah.
Yeah. So is the Gracie, is that your newest
Hmm.
pattern?
Uh huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it right here because I was just making one. So
Oh, great. Oh, she's gorgeous. I was looking at all the mock-ups yesterday and I was just drooling. I'm like, oh, these are so beautiful. And it's scrap friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I made. I'm going to share hopefully this week. I need it to stop raining so I can take pictures. But I made one with just scraps,
Okay.
which was a lot of fun. So I love scrap quilts. Those are really my favorite. So
That's amazing.
if I can make a pattern with scraps, I'd try to do it.
Yeah. I unfortunately keep picking patterns that I need to buy all new fabrics for.
Oh,
So
oh darn.
Like, oh, right. Well, the last quilt I made for myself, I know I've like talked about it on here before, but I have done, and the one behind me actually, I tested a couple patterns for Katerina Rochella. So
She's
this
awesome.
This was the first one I did. Yeah. And I had her Esoterra line for years and I just held on to it because I got the half yard bundle of all the prints and I got the backing. It's this one that has, sorry, but I'm like trying to grab it. It's got like the dinosaurs and the,
oh yeah, that's awesome.
jungle. So anyway, I had that for years and then she reached out on Instagram and was like, I need some pattern testers. And so I did this one. And then the one I just recently made was her newest pattern. And so again, had to buy all new fabric. I was like, darn it.
It's a sacrifice, but somebody's going to do it.
And now I have even more scraps. So.
I know. Well, it's like, so this quilt over here, I just made this past weekend. And because I needed that Ruby Star Society panel print, and I was like, how can I justify buying that? And so I did it, and I'm glad I did, but yeah. Did I need to? Did I have time to? No, but it happened. So
I mean, need is a weird word, right? Like, yeah, your need versus someone else's need. It's up for interpretation.
My mental health needed me to make that quilt. So
there you go. And it looks like it was worth it. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Very pink. Enjoyed it. I love that.
I also really love pink and purple are, you would never guess. Actually, I am wearing some pink today, but usually I'm like black, navy, olive green. I love too.
I'm like, I'm a lot of that underneath this too. So
yeah,
well,
that's normally me.
Yeah.
So, but when I love bright colors.
Mm-hmm. It's just so fun. And like being able to pick stuff that maybe you wouldn't necessarily put in your everyday rotation or like normally have, you can just play. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah. The really amazing thing to me about quilting is you can just do anything. Like there's no rules. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. I love that about it, that everybody gets to do whatever they want. And you can follow a pattern. You don't have to follow a pattern. You can use, just a line of fabric, or you can pick whatever fabrics you want. There's no right or wrong. And it's the greatest thing.
It's amazing.
It gives people the opportunity to stretch and find what they love. And
yeah. And I love too, like we live in a time where we can then see what everybody did with their creativity on our screen, like every day. It's amazing. But to have that much, it's almost overwhelming how much creativity is out there. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the coolest things is being able to see everything, but then also I'm like, oh, I want to make everything.
Yes, that is also a problem.
Yeah, it's like I want that same quilt in 18 different colors and all these different fabrics. And yeah, it gets crazy, but
it does.
And find what works for you and find what makes you happy. And
yeah,
I think quilting can offer that. Like quilting seems, I think in my last episode, my guest and I kind of talked about it, but like quilting seems like such a small word for the giant umbrella that it implies of all the things that are underneath it that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be anything. And that's why, I think so many people had a hard time with that whole like stop cutting up quilts for quilt code thing that was going around, whatever. Because you should just do whatever you want.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's not up to one person's opinion or, however you want. If it's getting used and given new life, then I think that that's ultimately the most beautiful part about it. If someone,
and I think the person who originally made that would want it to keep getting used, however that looked. So
yeah, or like people are thrifting quilt tops that were just given away. Like, yeah, repurpose it, use it for something cool. Don't lock it away in a museum. Like, I understand there's certain things that are like, yes, came from whatever, it is museum worthy, but I think the ultimate goal is that whoever has the quilt that you give them uses it and loves it, and it works its way into their life, and
they find joy in whatever form it takes. I think that's like good.
Wrapping yourself in a hug.
Yeah, I don't have any desire to wear a quilt coat, but if somebody else does, go for it.
I don't want to cut up a quilt, but I'm gonna make a quilt coat.
Oh, good.
For it and everything. I'm so excited.
I think they're so cool. I do not like to sew garments at all. So it's not, I would maybe do like a skirt. I could do like a skirt.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That would be actually really cute.
Yeah.
Oh, my friends would always joke that they were going to like quilt me vests and stuff because I was there for 8 years. They're like, we're going to embroider stuff and quilt you vests. And they never did, thankfully. But now I'm like, well, but it's kind of cool now. And they're like, yeah, we're sad that we love it, but we do. No, I think, I think that's my favorite part. I think I already said it, but that there's just endless possibilities in the world of fabric crafting, whether it's quilting or garment sewing or, whatever. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah, and people keep coming up with new stuff. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, okay. So speaking of coming up with new stuff, how do you name your quilts? Are they people you know or just names you like?
So it started because my first 2 patterns were named after my son's kindergarten teachers, and I gave them to him. He is not an easy kid to have in class, and they were amazing. And so I named them Carol and Debbie. Those are my first 2 patterns. Were named after them. And so then I was like, well, I might as well continue doing that. And right after that, I released my Betty quilt pattern, and that was named after one of my old teachers who had just passed away. I'm from a really tiny town. And so this is how small my town was. She was my preschool teacher, my 5th grade teacher, and she lived across the street from me. So so anyway, I named that pattern after her. And so then I started, a lot of them are named after teachers. And then I was like, I started running out of names. And so I was like, well, I should look at, just women that I admire, or names from my family tree. And so I used a lot of those, but turns out like all of the names of my family tree are like Margaret and Elizabeth. That's like 90% of the women were named that. So I've tried to continue that, but then I just kind of just go with whatever. I've just gone alphabetically. My kids help me pick, and we just pick a name that feels right for that quilt. So, but I do have some, like Gracie, my daughter's middle name is Grace. So that's what that came from. And then my 2 of my kids have quilts named after them, August and Harper, but my son Jonah doesn't, so he would like one. So, so that will be coming. Yeah. And then I've named quilts after 2 of my sisters, Kelly and Carly, and my other sister, Kara, because they all have like C and K names. It was tricky. So she wants one, so that's going to happen. And then my mom's name's Melody, so at some point I will do that. And then after that, I don't know, just whatever feels right.
I was going to say, is it like the personality of the quilt, or is it just...
I just kind of just whatever. I don't know. So it's not really a word. The one right here, this will come out later this year. It's called Elena. And when I was writing it, I was visiting my family, and I was in the town where one of my ancestors had lived, and her name was Elena, and that's where that came from. So some of them are more significant than others. Some are just what felt right.
Yeah.
So
it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Exciting. It looks fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to name them. And it's fun when I get a message from somebody who has that name and says, "Oh, I'm so excited to make the quilt that has my name." Because that's something that never even I really thought about. And so my kids are always joking. They're like, "Is there going to be an Erica quilt?" And I said, "Well, it'd be kind of weird because then it would say the Erica quilt, a pattern by Erica Jackman." So I don't think I'm going to do that, but
They're all Erica quilts.
but there's one that's named Taylor, which is my maiden name. So that, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, kind of.
That's awesome. I know. I was like looking at all the names. I'm like, did she just randomly pick these? This is crazy. I love it. Like,
it's fun.
It's just fun to see what people name their quilts too. And I just love that most of yours have people names. Like,
yeah. I've had fun with it. It's hard to name a quilt. So giving it a person's name made it easier because I'm not good at coming up with just like I don't know, a name that
you're like, I don't know, it's something.
And so many names are taken. So that made it easier because then like the quilt type names that you'd think of were all taken, and I wanted hashtags that were unique to my quilt. So
yeah,
I tried. There are some other quilts out there with people's names, so I try to avoid doing that. But I have unintentionally used one a couple times that already had been used. But I figure as long as they don't look alike, it doesn't really matter.
Right, exactly. And then because then you can see the difference. It's not like you're taking the name and the design.
Yeah.
You're not like, no, this is mine, I swear.
Yeah, that would be awkward.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I have noticed that because like even with that recent pattern I tested, the Zeliga, there's some other stuff out there that it has that name, but I'm like, no, this pattern. And so I just didn't even realize, I think, until I started looking into more patterns and making more patterns, that there are multiple names out there that are multiple patterns with the same name. And so that would be tricky. But it's the same.
It's a little tricky.
Naming your kid, it's like
other people have that name.
Yeah, you're gonna eventually run into that same person unless you have like a wild made up name.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever heard, which is cool, but then it's like, yeah, you're not gonna find someone else. And it's rare to find Amanda, which is kind of nice because I don't run into myself very often.
Mm-hmm. Same with Erica. It happens though.
Yeah. So every once in a while I'm like, hey, that's my name.
Well, it's so funny because my daughter's name's Harper and she's 13. And when I named her that was like, everyone was like, you're naming her what? It wasn't common. And now like my 6-year-old knows like 5 kids named Harper. So
yeah,
it got popular. But you never know.
Yeah. It's just funny how that works. But
yeah,
I love that yours have people names. That just really is one of the things I love about them too. Like, because I'm like, oh, it's their personality. It's who this quilt is. And
yeah, I feel like the quilt it does that's part of why I like it too, is because it's like the quilt has a personality and it has a name to go with it.
Yeah, that's fun. So that quilt directly behind you said is coming out later this year. Is that your immediate next project, or you have something?
No, I have one more, and the way that I've been sometimes like I did some patterns that were in the Ruby Star Society lookbook. And so sometimes when I do that, they need the pattern in hand before I'm ready to release the pattern.
Yeah.
And so I actually already have the pattern written and printed and ready to go, which is nice, but also was really hectic to get done. Yeah. But so I have one more before that one, and then that one, they're both ready to go. So
okay.
Yeah, but I don't always do that. It just worked out that they requested several at once, and so it's been a bit of a hectic couple of months to get those ready quickly.
I bet that's because it is a lot of work. Like,
yeah, it is.
I mean, everything's set up how you want it, and making sure everything's correct and all that.
It's stressful too, because like it's one thing to do a PDF, but to order the paper pattern, it's expensive. And so like if you make a mistake, it's expensive. So it's stressful. Getting from doing just PDF patterns, which I did for a long time,
Mhm.
and then moving to paper was a hard transition for me, but it's been really good. I'm glad I did it. It just was scary.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, because it feels more permanent, I bet.
Yeah. And I don't have a ton of room. Like my sewing room is like 8 by 8. It's not a big
Wow.
room. And so we've had to get creative with where we store the patterns in our house. So
Yeah. I know my mom jokes that we're
hidden.
slowly taking over her house because like the room I'm in right now is on their main floor and it's an office, but it's our design studio. So we like it's where we do all of our, admin stuff, but we have, store
Mhm.
our Minky that we sell and we've got the closet is now stuffed full of more Minky and we're
Mhm.
like slowly taking over. We've got a big room upstairs and we're slowly taking over parts of downstairs. We're like, sorry, but it's hard. It's like you have to have a lot of stuff to
It's
do this.
it's so true, and it takes up a lot of room. So yeah,
Mhm.
when we moved into this house, my boys share a room, and their room is really big.
Mm.
It's like I don't know what they intended that room to be for, but it's a really big room, and I'm like, why didn't I take that room?
Yeah.
They could have this tiny room.
Yeah. You're like,
But
you go in there. I'm going to take, maybe you can just swap them one day.
I
Just if you
know
come home from
because I could even I think I could have a long arm in there even, but yeah,
school.
definitely not in here. So
That was
barely
like,
walk in this room.
you're like, I think I have stuff in here. I'm not sure. Can't find it.
It's here somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the beauty of this house is that it does have a really big room that was 2 rooms and they took the
Mhm.
wall down. And so now it's really long. And so we were able to stick our long arm up there and it worked out. But yeah, I can't imagine being in an 8 by 8
Yeah,
space.
I basically have, yeah, it's full. It's so full. But my patterns are stored like in the laundry room and like in the garage and under our bed and just anywhere I can think of. So sometimes I'll get an order and I'll be like, where are those patterns? I know I have them. I have to hunt them down.
Which location are they?
Where did I hide them?
It's like a scavenger hunt every time.
Yeah, oh, so fun.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
it's good.
that's
It's
hilarious.
good. I'm grateful to have orders, so I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great because it's like, okay, I have these because people are ordering my patterns and I'm selling them and sending them off, but also I have to get creative with where they go.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's gotten hard because printing got even more expensive this past year, like a lot more expensive. So now when I order patterns, I have to order more or they're more expensive. Like it's cheaper to order more. And
Right.
so I've had to order larger quantities to still make them cost effective. And so, yeah, it's like, where do I put them? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
don't have 3 times as many as I wanted, but
Yeah. Ah, the joys of all of this. It's good though. I like that Minky in the background. That's nice.
oh, thanks. Yeah, that's we get from Shannon Fabrics and it's the mallard.
That's really pretty.
So it's like a deep teal. It's our
I
favorite.
like that.
I have it on.
Is it the 90 inch or the
Mhm.
regular? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
one's
good stuff.
nice. We have some other, we have like their basil green and 90 inch and the scarlet red
Mm,
and navy, more mallard because we bought like 2 or 3 bolts when we got it at first because me and my best friends, that was like our favorite color to draw on the back of everything. And so, but we just ordered, we have some seal, which is like their luxe. I don't know if you've
hmm
got that stuff, but
Yes. So I actually made my first quilt using some of the Lux recently, and so it's so messy,
it
but
is
it's so
so
soft. It was just like ridiculous.
I know. We're like, of course they call this one seal because it's slippery as heck. It just like slides all over the place. We're like,
Yeah.
this is not
I'm
fun.
like still finding it everywhere. But yeah, so then my kids were like, "Oh, I want a quilt with something like this." So I actually ordered like 3 or 4 months ago I had them pick. I ordered it. I haven't even opened the box because I'm like, it's gonna explode everywhere.
Yeah, it's just a mess waiting to happen for sure.
At some point they will get their quilts and I'll open the box. But yeah, no, I'm gonna have to come check out your shop because
Yeah.
I like that. I know we go through Boise sometimes. So
yeah, you could come visit us. That would be fun.
yeah, I'll come see you. My parents live in Salt Lake, so
Oh, nice.
it's on the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we just love Minky so much. And I mean, I made a whole episode of the podcast of just about Minky because
it's so good.
I could talk about it for days.
I mean, it's great because it's cozy. My kids are way more likely to use a quilt if it's got Minky on the back. Yeah. But also like, because especially the 90-inch, it's so cost effective for the quilt backing because it's good.
Yeah, the 90-inch is where it's at for sure. And some other brands also make their Luxe cuddle in the 80-inch wide. So I've had to go that route sometimes if I couldn't find the 90-inch that I needed, which was nice. But yeah, we get the remnant cuts from Shannon Fabrics. So they send us like these chunks of just like tons of different types of Minky. Wow. And you just buy it by the pound. And so we have like all these random, I mean, I have a whole bunch behind me. I've got like red and black camo. I've got giraffe print.
Oh yeah, I can see the giraffe.
Like, yeah, right here. I've got snake print. I've got buffalo check. I mean,
that's cute.
But it's like such a cool way to get so many different types without a whole bolt of something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, a bolt is a lot. Yeah. I actually just made some baby quilts. My son and daughter both had the same third grade teacher. When my daughter was in her class, she was starting the adoption process. And then when my son was in her class, she adopted a little girl. So I made her a baby quilt. And now she isn't teaching anymore because 6 months ago, she had twins. And so she sent me a text a few months ago and said, can you make them quilts? And I said, of course I can make them quilts. I love to make baby quilts. Yeah. And, but she said they were snowflake babies, which is not a term I had ever heard before. But so she's like in her 40s ish, late 40s, I think. And so they used the fertilized, I don't know the technical terms for all of this. Yeah. They used the embryos from another couple that were donated. Oh. So that's what they call a snowflake baby, I guess. Oh. Anyway, so they're not genetically related to them, but she carried the babies.
Okay.
So anyway, so she wanted to incorporate snowflakes in this somehow. Oh. So I found this, I think it's Shannon, but maybe it's a different brand, but it's a Minky and it's really fuzzy. And then it has snowflakes on the back, but it's like a texture. It's not like a print. Oh. It's not printed. Yeah. But the texture looks like snowflakes. Anyway, they were really pretty. And it was great because she didn't want it to be like an overwhelming snowflake theme. She just wanted some little nod to that, but it was really fun.
Yeah, I love their embossed ones too. We just got one that has like roses embossed in it, which oh man, it's gorgeous.
That sounds really nice.
It's just so fun. There's so much versatility to it, and
it's great. And people are afraid to sew with it sometimes, I think, but it's really not that much harder than just regular. It's if it's hot outside, it is hotter to sew with, but
yes, it will warm you up quicker. That's for sure. Yeah,
I mean, it is messier.
It is. But we've, if we buy it from the shop, we bring it in from the bag, toss it directly in the dryer and just put it on air fluff for like 10 minutes. And then that gets all those fibers out. And then we also keep a little handheld vacuum handy and just like vacuum the edges of it once we cut it. And that helps a lot, but it's still, it's just messy.
Yeah, it just gets everywhere. But yeah, no, someone told me about the dryer thing. So I did that. And that definitely did help. But as soon as you cut it, it's just like in the air, in your mouth.
I'm like, it's in my nose. Like, like you can just feel it. You're like, oh, it's there. I swear.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's okay.
Oh, super worth it. Yeah. And it's just funny too, because sometimes like the quilt shops, they don't want to cut it. And so they are like, I feel like they almost talk people out of buying it. We've had so many clients who've come and been like, oh, I was told you couldn't long arm on Minky. We were like, we do it every day.
Yeah, no, you definitely can.
Yeah, so it's fun. But yeah, that's a fun thing that we love to have around. And we just come in and touch it sometimes because it's so soft. And
It is. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
and my older son did the same thing with the seal, because we had gotten our first shipment of the remnant pieces, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas time before that, and he was already stationed in Colorado Springs, and so he was home visiting, I think at Thanksgiving time, and then we were going to go down for Christmas, and he touched a piece of the seal Minky, and he was like, excuse me, may I please have a quilt for Christmas? I was like, sure. So,
Twist my arm.
yeah, so I took it to him, and he wrapped himself in it, and he never got out of it the whole time we were visiting.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
just comforting and nice, which is just what a quilt should be. So
Exactly.
it is nice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's good stuff.
But people are always asking me where to buy Minky, so I'll have to send them your way.
Yeah, our
I don't have like a source. I just Etsy, whatever.
yeah, we sell it through our Etsy shop, or they can contact us on our website. So
Okay.
yeah. So it's about back to how you design your patterns, but is there like, do you ever have like a certain technique that you want to include in a pattern, or like do you have any goals that you want your pattern to meet?
So it used to be no. I would just do whatever I came up with, but I've tried to be better about using pre-cuts, because definitely I am not big on using pre-cuts, or at least I haven't been in the past, but other people are. And especially like if a shop wants to kit a pattern, it's much easier for them to use a pre-cut instead of, let's say, like some fat quarters, some half yards. That's harder for them to. So that has been an interesting challenge, because my brain had a hard time figuring out how to make that work, but I've gotten much better at it. So a lot of my patterns this year are going to be jelly roll friendly, because that was one a lot of people asked about. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to do more with that. That has been my goal lately. And I also wanted to try to do more beginner type stuff, because I think there are a lot of people during the pandemic that started quilting and are looking for easier patterns. So my next pattern is called Hannah. I don't think I have it handy, but and it's beginner friendly and jelly roll friendly. So that's been my goal lately. And so I'm going to do a quilt along with that pattern that's beginner focused. And so it'll just be very basic, because it's hard with a quilt along. They're fun, but there's so many different skill levels. So it's hard to know, like, am I going into too much detail? Is this not enough detail? So with the beginner focused quilt along, I know I need to just be very basic. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So that'll be, I don't know, in a month or two.
Nice.
Not that organized.
We'll get to it when we get to it.
Yeah, I try to be organized, but then I set unrealistic goals for myself. So it almost is better to just not be organized and let things just happen, because otherwise I try to do too much. So
yeah, I hear you. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not get even half of that done. So
this
cool.
took way longer than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, every time.
Yes.
It's all right though. I mean, I think when you're self-employed, that is what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you are going to set goals and you're not going to meet them. And that's just what it is too. It's fine.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I just can't say enough how much I love your patterns and how
thank you.
They are. I mean, just seeing all the different mock-ups and like, the quilt along versions that people share of everyone. It's just, there's so many versatile ways to use them and ways to show off different fabrics. And I just love it. And that your voice is so clear in all of them. I just really admire you for that. So
thank you. I enjoy doing it so much. I mean, really, I like writing the patterns and I like making the quilts. That's what I'm here for. So
that's awesome.
I love it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. So let's tell our listeners, where can they find you online?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at my handle, screen name, I don't know.
Yeah,
Kitchen Table Quilting. If you just search for my name too, it'll show up, Erica Jackman. And you can also find my website is just kitchentablequilting.com. And then my shop is shop.kitchentablequilting.com. So they're all linked to each other. If you find me in one place, you can find me in the other places. But yeah, I'm on Instagram mostly. I try to post on my blog at least once a week or so, depending. I know Instagram's the thing now, but some people do still read blogs. And I have an email list too, which you can sign up for that on my blog.
Awesome. All right. Well, and we'll link all those things too in the
Okay.
show description so that people can easily click to find you. But
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. And
Yeah, thank you for asking me.
yeah,
It was a lot of fun.
yeah. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.